The direction they've gone in and how far ahead they are, these are things that the lumps of elephant dung can reveal, at least to the experienced eye. The firmness and dampness of the excreta tell the mannan just how long it's been there. Here, it's less than an hour. And the location of several of these lumps quickly reveals the direction the elephants have moved in. Even if the track points to the direction of the woods, the mannan go along the edge of the lake, because the elephants never move very far away from this. And anyway, the mannan know just where the nearest elephant drinking and bathing places are.
We soon discover the herd again, but they're no longer alone. They've met up with another group. There's no sign of any rivalry. The two groups join up and look for the last remains of grass and leaves together. Throughout the dry season, more elephants arrive in the sanctuary almost every day, including some who've never been seen here before. All of them stay as close as they can to the water, tearing off the very last of the twigs and branches they can reach and pulling the last parched plants out of the soil. So, for Periyar, as for many other sanctuaries, the question arises where to go and what to do with all the elephants. What are the alternatives? Either allowing the elephants to destroy this valuable biotope within just a few years, with the result that neither elephants nor any other animal communities will be able to survive here, or reducing the number of elephants as quickly as possible. This doesn't necessarily have to be done in the sanctuary itself, but can be carried out in the catchment areas during the dry periods. The few remaining elephants there don't lead very happy lives anyway. The situation in Asia now is the same as it was in Africa some years ago. The elephants are destroying their own habitats.
In Indian wildlife reserves, herds of cattle are a familiar sight. All the barriers put up to keep them out are to no avail. During the drought, local smallholders will always find ways of driving their cattle into the sanctuary. In fact, they've got no choice if they don't want their livestock to die of hunger or thirst. Their pastures are parched, and they don't even have enough water to drink anymore. Kerala has a relatively high proportion of Christians, and they eat beef, so keeping livestock is fairly widespread here. And this means that the cattle are competing with the elephants for food. Now and again, rangers drive the cattle out of the sanctuary, but this doesn't help for very long, because the cattle will almost certainly come back in again somewhere else. Elephants will normally chase off any other animals which compete with them for food, like stags or wild boar, or even the huge Gaur oxen. But they leave ordinary cattle well alone, perhaps because cattle carry the scent of man, the elephant's only enemy. It only takes one cow to drive the elephant herd to flight from one of the few remaining moisture-filled shores of the lake.
The only help for the suffering animals comes from above, when the black monsoon clouds finally appear to put an end to the worst drought this region has had in a long time. This is help of a bureaucratic kind. Just under 100 meters from Lake Periyar, a large water hole is being dug, simply because some distant government officials have decided that providing more water holes would be the best way of helping the animal sanctuaries in this awful drought. The funds for this project come from a special job creation budget, and so the water holes have to be dug, even if their value is doubtful. So a well-intentioned measure is basically wasted because it's administered in too bureaucratic a fashion. But this sort of thing is not restricted to India, of course. It's found all over the world. The job of digging the water holes has been given to people from the neighbouring state of Tamil Nadu and not from Kerala itself, because the men from Tamil Nadu don't cost so much. The money saved in this way will almost certainly be needed again very soon to fill in the water holes again. If the elephants all flock to the water holes, the tourists won't get to see any more wildlife on the shore of the lake. But to a large extent, wildlife tourism finances the running of the wildlife sanctuary and also helps support a large number of hotels and other tourist facilities. And for the money they spend, the visitors naturally want to see animals.
A Brahmani harrier. This bird somehow still manages to get its daily ration of fish from the lake. Most species of bird have left the region and moved further north. But the darter also still lives off the lake.
The continuing drought has driven an unusually large number of wild boars to the shores of the lake. The sows and their young aren't even particularly shy anymore, but the males very rarely show themselves. Paddy birds, an Asian variety of heron.
The favourite of the tourists, though, is the elephant. A boat trip on Lake Periyar would be a disappointment for the visitors if they didn't get a chance to spot a few elephants. There's no risk of that, though, during this drought, at least not for the time being. Like all communities of animals, the elephants survive the ability of their environment to support them. In other words, they go on living for a while, even when their habitat can't really support them anymore. Admittedly, only for 1 or 2 generations, but in the case of elephants, that means 50 to 60 years. It's only then that they react to environmental changes with a marked drop in numbers. So the present number of elephants, and there are estimated to be at the most 20,000 of them left in the whole of India and Sri Lanka, actually corresponds to an environment which existed 50 years ago. And it'll take another 50 years before the number of animals has dropped to correspond with today's less favourable conditions. That leaves plenty of time for the excessive number of elephants to have devastated a territory that's already much too small for them. That's why the authorities are occasionally forced to thin out the ranks of the elephant population, to prevent the sort of overgrazing which leads to the complete destruction of vegetation.
For the moment, at least, nobody in India is considering this radical method. Instead, they're turning to an ancient Indian tradition and catching and training elephants to make them more useful to man. So perhaps one day soon, people will be able to ride on one of the elephants swimming here in Lake Periyar, or to see them colourfully decorated in a